Shalom, shalom. This is the brother Mawam coming back with another sit down, and Lord willing is edifying. I want to start off and give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Harakak and double honors to the elder apostles, great millstone, ruling teach well, and honors and salutations to the men of the Lord doing the same and teaching the same. All right, and this lesson will be 1611 King James Bible. That'll be the title. Okay. And pretty much just following in the footsteps, the elder Apostle Tahar and the Akim that's doing the same videos, okay, on, the Apocrypha being, in the 1611 KJV Bible, King James Version Bible, okay, and you're not going to hear about this in Christianity, and plus they're going to make it seem like it's not a big deal, and it is, it's a reason why they took the Apocrypha out, and I'm going to be focusing on that in this lesson, because the question is, why did they take the Apocrypha out of the, from the Old and New Testament? Okay, out of the 1611 King James Version Bible. Okay, so they did it for a reason. All right, so in this lesson, and Lord willing is edifying, we're going to go over that reason. Okay, and I'm going to be skipping around in this AI overview. Okay, and I encourage you to go watch, the Elder Apostle Tahar's lesson. All right, and other brothers like Elder Menachem Zagba, he did a lesson on it as well. Okay, just going over the Apocrypha and the importance of the Apocrypha, because you still got Israelites that don't believe that the Apocrypha, heathens as well, Edomites, they believe that the Apocrypha is not valid, and it's, they don't think that it's a part of the Bible. And that's because they lack, they don't know the history behind the Apocrypha, all right, and the importance of it, okay? And bear with me, let me turn my car on. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna be jumping around in the AI overview. All right, so it says the Apocrypha was removed from the Protestant Bibles primarily because reformers sought to align the Old Testament canon with the shorter Hebrew Bible, Tanakh, which didn't include these books, viewing them as non-canonical due to questionable authorship, lack of Hebrew originals, and doctrines like salvation by works contradictory to solidified faith alone teachings. All right. And you see, this is Esau, the so-called white man, is the devil. All right, and they also have something called the Bible Destruction Group. Okay, and they was adding and taking away from the Bible, because for what they felt like, was true or not, and right here, the scriptures all through the Bible, it tells you that and I can get a quick precept on it instead of just quoting it. So this Revelation is Revelation 14 and 12. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of Yahweh and the faith of Yahweh Shah. So you got to have both. Okay? And you're not going to be justified just by keeping the law. All right? You got to have both. So to the best of your ability, you're supposed to try to keep the law. All right? Okay? You can't, in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, it goes into that. You know how if you're not keeping any commandments, it's impossible for the Holy Spirit to dwell in you. So that shows you how much Esau knows. Esau don't know shit. Esau is not spiritual. They're the wicked. They're the devil that the Bible speaks of. So-called white people. All right. And I'm gonna go into the real reason why they took the Apocrypha out of the Bible. Okay. It says, though they were often included in early printings like the 1611 KJV for historical context before being fully omitted by Bible societies in the 19th century, all right, in the 1800s. Okay, so and you got something called the Bible Destruction Group. All right, I'm gonna jump down. And then Esau's reasons for taking the Apocrypha out was not valid at all. Okay? It was not valid at all. All right? They're just devils at the end of the day. And they're tampering, Esau is tampering with the Bible, the scriptures, the holy scriptures. And it's not even for them. That belongs to the Israelites. The Bible is a historical book, all right, of the Israelites, the so-called blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans. All right, it contains everything: our culture, our origin, all right, so on and so on. Okay, so I want to read this right here, the KJV inclusion. It says the original 1611 King James Version included the Apocrypha, but later editions dropped them as Protestant views solidified. Because what was written in Scripture, it didn't, what was written in the Bible, it didn't fit their religion, so to speak. So they wanted to remove it. Okay? So let's get the in Scripture, the reason. Okay? And this history, matter of fact, I want to title this lesson the Hellenization period happened right before the ancient Roman Empire. Okay, Lord willing, I can shorten it to fit it in there. Okay, because you're not going to learn this history about Alexander the Great and the Greeks oppressing the Israelites, oppressing the Jews. Okay, the Romans oppressing the Israelites, oppressing the Jews. Okay, putting them in captivity, subjection. Okay, you're not going to learn this in these schools. Okay, because it disrupts. It's like a pothole in the road. So this road of lies that Esau has built, the Apocrypha is like a huge pothole. And if you hit it, your tire's gonna pop. You're gonna catch a flat. So Esau knows that the Apocrypha is true. It's true. All right. History. All right. This actually happened. Okay. The Greeks oppressed the Israelites, and of course, the Greeks were so-called white people. All right. You learned that in school. All right. But they're not going to teach you that the Greeks and also during the Hellenized period, the generals after Alexander the Great, all right, who he parted his kingdom between 4 generals, all right. They pretty much ran that Hellenization period and oppressed the Israelites. Okay, just to give you a summary. Okay, and that happened before the ancient Roman Empire came into full power. All right, and the Greeks and the Romans were both Edomites. The Greeks and the Romans were both Edomites, so-called white people. Okay, and they oppressed the Israelites. All right, So that history is very important. Okay, so let's read it. First Maccabees 1:1, and it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Shittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece, and made many wars, and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth, and went through to the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him. Whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up, and he gathered a mighty strong host, and ruled over countries and nations and kings, who became tributaries unto him. And after these things he fell sick, and perceived that he should die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable, and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. So Alexander reigned 12 years, and then died, and his servants bare rule, every one in his place. And after his death they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. Okay, so evils was multiplied under the rulership of the Edomites. Okay, it says and there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been an hostage at Rome. And he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. Okay? In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. Okay? You know, is no new thing under the sun. The same thing Israelites, you so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans was doing back then, you're doing it now. You know, you always had sellouts. Like off the movie Django. All right. You always had coons and sellouts that didn't want to die. Okay. You know, they didn't take their heritage and their nationality serious. You know, so they rather, you know, just convert to the heathen way of life and do whatever the heathen want them to do so they wouldn't die. Okay? In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen. That's what these Christian pastors are like. Okay? That's basically what Martin Luther King was doing. All right? It says, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein, that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinance of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem, according to the customs of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. Okay, so you clearly see Israelites being Hellenized. Okay, you clearly see Israelites being Hellenized. Okay, because Christianity doesn't teach you that. Christianity doesn't teach you that God's chosen people, you know, were Hellenized. Okay, you know, and also the diaspora, the dispersion of the Israelites, too, the scattering of the Israelites. Okay, you know that it happened in 70 AD, and after that too, with the transatlantic slave trade, and it's another one dealing with the Arabs, because the Arabs had Israelites in slavery too, in captivity. Okay, it's another one. Slakia. All right, so it says 14, whereupon they built a place of exercise. Okay, read that one. Verse 16, Salakia. It says, and now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have the dominion of 2 realms. All right, so let's jump down. Verse 41. So this history proves and show you that the Israelites, the Jews, was what? Hellenized. Okay, and start to not get circumcised, to unlearn their own language and customs, and adopt the customs of the Greeks. Speaking Greek, and hey, living after the ways of the Greeks, being what? Hellenized. All right, so the Israelites was Hellenized. Okay, hence being called what? Gentiles. Hence being called heathen, stranger. All right. Foreigner, alienated. The scriptures talk about us being alienated. Strangers in a strange land. Okay. So this is proof, all right, that the Greeks and also in later on in the Apocrypha, also the Romans too, which were both Edomites, all right, so-called white people, who oppressed and destroyed, the Israelites. Okay. So getting back to it, it says, moreover, the king Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom, that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath. For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, and they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, that they should profane the Sabbath and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and the holy people. Okay? Excuse me. Set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts. That they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. And whosoever will not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die. All right. Okay. That's pretty much the point I wanted to make. And I'm gonna read verse 64. And there was very great wrath upon Israel. All right. From who? The Greeks. All right. And and the 4 generals that came after Alexander the Great. Okay. So that history is very important, because in Esau's education system, you don't hear nothing about that. When you're in school and you're learning about the Greeks, and the Romans, the Greek Empire and the Roman Empire, you don't hear shit about no Israelites. You don't hear nothing about no Jews being oppressed or none of that. You don't hear that. So that's very important. Okay? They purposely left out that part of history. Why? Because it's a pothole and a road full of lies. Okay? Because once you find that out, it's a whole bunch of questions, and all them lies is being cut down. Okay? Because Christians try to make it seem like the Israelites was never Hellenized. Okay, the Israelites was never scattered. They try to make it seem like that. Okay, but we understand prophecy. All praises to Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shah. We understand prophecy. Okay, That's how we know who the Edomites are today in these last days, because we know prophecy. That's how we know who the Israelites are in these last days. Why? Because we know prophecy. That's how we know World War III is going to happen. Why? Because we know prophecy, according to the Bible. Okay? And so on and so on. All right? I'm going to get straight to it. This first Maccabees 3 and 48, and laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images. All right? And it is, just like King Solomon said, who was Yahweh Shai in the reincarnation. All right? If you're able to receive that. But King Solomon said, there's no new thing under the sun. All right? So Esau been deceiving. All right? He's been doing that, deceiving, rape, rob, and murder. Every time they came into power, they did that. Okay? All right? So, Lord willing, that was edifying. Want to end it and give all praises to Yahweh Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shah, Ba'Hashem, Harakak Badash, double honors to the elder apostles, great millstone, rule and teach well, and honors and salutations to the men of the Lord doing the same and doing the same. Teaching the same and doing the same. All right? Shalom.